Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Before we meet today's guest, we want to give a shout out to our podcast partners, the global community of women in high school sports, We Coach, and the Florida Coaches Coalition. Please check these three groups out. You should be a part of them. And now let's have a quick word from our podcast sponsors. We want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Go to hometownticketing.com. They are the trusted leader in digital ticketing. They're going to show you how to set up and sell tickets for your events, not just your athletic events, but things like your school plays, your concerts, school dances, even graduation. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you'll have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com and get started today. Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing supplier to schools and colleges. We also want to thank Snap Mobile. Go to snapraise.com and check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you do your job better. Snap Store allows you to order custom gear for everybody in your program. Snap Manage will help you design an entire website. Snap Connect is their family engagement platform, and Snap Raise is their fundraising platform. We've used it with great success, and they've helped schools just like yours raise over $700 million. They even have an option where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. I don't think anybody else offers that. Go to snapraise.com and check out their entire suite today. That's snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. You've heard me say before that our Sideline Interactive indoor score table is one of the best purchases I ever made. It not only generates income for our department, but also creates the ultimate game day experience for our student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com, schedule a live web demo, and see their tables and their display boards in action. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. Use our podcast code ADPOD10 and you'll get 10% off. That's gipper.com. Create custom content for your school's social media channel. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And Huddle provided the tools that helped our coaches, our teams, and our athletes play at the highest level. Go to huddle.com and you're going to find a professional grade solution to the challenges you face as an athletic director. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and find out how to turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. They've got a tremendous variety, and they're going to help you recognize the athletic achievements of your school's athletes, both past and present, and showcase your school's diverse history. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today. We want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in forms and registration, but there's so much more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile apps. They've got reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like attendance and communication. And for you as an athletic director, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes, somebody who gets it. To find out more, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake and get started with Final Forms. And we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. As athletic directors, we typically only hear from the 2% of student athletes or parents who, for some reason, didn't have a great experience. And we need to hear from that 2%, but you also need to hear from the 98% that really love and support your program. And Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack can help you do that. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your student athletes or your parents, you're really missing out. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Got a really cool guest today, Cydryce McMillian. She's a teacher and the head volleyball coach at Episcopal High School in Texas, but she has a tremendous background. Multiple state championships, multiple Coach of the Year honors. She's also a very successful consultant in coaching and leadership and DEI. Excited to hear from her. And Cydryce McMillian, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here and to be among such a great audience of people. And I'm looking forward to our conversation and just sharing.
Well, we appreciate you spending some time with us. And again, thank you for those kind words. As you know, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up, sports, of course. Maybe take us up through your college years at Indiana. Then we'll take a quick break. And then when we come back, we'll hear more about your early coaching career. But what's the Cyd McMillian story?
Well, Cyd McMillian was born in Houston, Texas. Born and raised here. Went to a high school called Dobie High School. Had a chance to play 3 sports. I was volleyball, basketball, and track at the time. And then just found a passion for the game. And it was early on. That was back in the 90s, mid to late 90s, when club was trying to, come to fruition. And so I dabbled in club. And I didn't even start until I was a sophomore in high school, and just fell in love with the game and had a great time, playing for Houston Juniors and Texas Elite and some of the best coaches in the Houston area during that time. From Donna Branch, who was my high school coach, and to Mitch Castile, who, and Debbie Yaney, who oversaw me when I was in the club game. And so had an opportunity then opened up for a scholarship to go play at Indiana University. And that's where I was recruited to be a middle blocker. And that was before the libero game. So I tell people all the time, I was a 6th row middle blocker. They were thinking they were going to move me to the outside, but something about the height of that ball and my timing just did not connect. And had a great career in the middle, set records, played left back, which is the libero position now. So just was able to experience the full gamut of the game as a player. I was an astute student, so I really believed in the student athlete, and my coach in college was very supportive of that. At that time, I thought I was going to go pre-med and be a doctor, and I loved kids, and so I wanted to be a pediatrician. And then I graduated and told my dad, I remember, that I want to get into coaching. And that was a bit of a surprise, and that's what I did. And I've been doing education and coaching ever since.
You brought up a good point about back, when you were in high school in the 90s, club was just kind of beginning. Looking back now from, very successful coaching career, and we're going to get into that. How important now do you feel that club experience is, not for the elite athlete, but for the rank and file, high school athlete? What's your thought on that?
So I think it just depends on a couple of factors. If it's something you're wanting to pursue at the college level, then I definitely think, club sports can definitely provide an avenue for you to get there. If it's something that you're just passionate about and you just want to extend that passion outside of a high school season, then your club sports are there for that. So I do think it provides a means to an end, whether that is, to go and play at the next level, or if it's just to, help those students figure out the holistic part of who they are. I think sports are great for that. And being able to do it, outside of just your high school season opens up different social circles and different elements to really expand who those individuals, those kids are. And so I do appreciate club sports, whether, it's soccer or volleyball or whatever it may be. But we have to be mindful and careful of the amount of time our kids are being programmed, right? I think you can over-program kids. And so you just want to be able to watch that too.
Yeah, great thoughts on that. As a longtime AD, and as a again, I'm much older than you. Multi sports was what we all did back then.
Yeah.
But I love when I would ask a kid, a student athlete, and whether it was volleyball or soccer or any sport that was in club, I said, why do you play club? And the kids would most of the time answer, hey, I just love the sport. I just love volleyball. Or I just love soccer. And they had no intention of, playing at the next level. They just loved it. But sometimes when you talk to the parents, how come you have your kid play club? They've got to get a college scholarship. It's the only way to get a college scholarship. And so it's just that dynamic was something that, you always had in the back of your mind as an AD or as a coach, and just trying to make sure the kids are enjoying it and it's not something there for the parents.
Right. I truly agree with that.
For our listeners, our guest today is Cydryce McMillian, a very, very successful volleyball coach and educator in Houston, Texas. We're going to take our first break, but when we come back, we're going to hear a little bit more about that coaching career. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. And if you go to hometownticketing.com, they're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online, not just for your athletic events, but for things like school plays, your concerts, school dances, even graduation. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you'll have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com and get started selling your tickets online. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Snap Mobile is the parent company for an entire suite of platforms designed to help you as a coach or an athletic director do your job better. Snap Store allows you to order custom gear for everyone in your program. Snap Manage will help you design an entire website. Snap Connect is their family engagement platform. And of course, Snap Raise is their fundraising platform. We've used it with great success, and they've helped schools just like yours raise over $700 million. They even have a program where you can get your money before you actually start your fundraiser. Does anybody else offer that? I don't think so. Go to snapraise.com and check out the entire suite. That's snapraise.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Cyd McMillian, very successful volleyball coach and teacher in Texas. Cyd, you finished your playing career at Indiana, had to be a great experience there at the D1 level, and you'd made the decision to become a teacher and a coach. Share a little bit about those early years, and of course, take us through some of the successes that you've experienced as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So right out of when I graduated from Indiana, I dabbled in college coaching for about 5 years. So I went down, it was then called Southwest Texas State. It's now Texas State. I was there when they were transitioning that name and title and stuff and rebranding that particular university, and had a chance to work under one of the greats, Karen Chisholm, there as a 21-year-old coming right out of college and wanting to coach girls that were still my age. And so I remember, I had middles. That was who they gave me to train. And I actually ended up having an all conference middle in my first season. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I have something here. We ended up with that particular team. We won the conference, went undefeated. It was something that was unheard of. And then, got ready to go to NC2As and then bombed out. So after that, a couple lessons there. I had to reflect a little bit on, why can you be so good in an undefeated team in conference and then get to that conference tournament? And it was almost like, realistically, it felt like Space Jam, where all of the talent and the skill, and we honestly, when we look back at it as a team, and I'm still connected with some of those players, it was almost like they couldn't do anything right. And so I think I kind of began to process that as a coach, as what does it take? So what does it take once you're an undefeated team to still get to a championship level and keep pushing for that next step? So after that, I ended up going back to my alma mater to coach. So I went up to Indiana and took on the title of recruiting coordinator. I was in the Big Ten going up against some of the giants at that time with Russ Rose at Penn State. Shondell was just getting on at Purdue, and had a chance to just really begin to, test the waters in talent identification, right? Could I identify talent that would match up with our system and what we wanted and find the right personnel in order to be successful? Well, at that point, you had to really define success, because you had all these big dogs that were just at the top of the Big Ten. And was it a matter of Indiana being able to break into those top 5, schools in the Big Ten? No, we couldn't. And so that became frustrating for me, trying to go out and recruit and identify talent that you thought would be competitive enough to push for that higher level in that particular conference. But at the same time, understanding that we couldn't get the personnel that some of those other schools could get. And I began to evaluate in myself, is this worth my time? Is this worth what I want for the game? I felt like a lot of my time was spent recruiting during that particular season of my career. And I wanted to be on the court more. I wanted to be impacting, females more. And so I think that's what kind of drove me into the high school setting. It just gave me a better quality of a work-life balance. I didn't have to do the recruiting piece. It was one of those things, you get what you get, whoever those kids are coming, they're going to feed into your system, and you have to work with that and get to know those kids. So, early on, I was hardcore. I just had a conversation with some of my players from when I first got into high school, coming right out of college coaching, and we were doing 3-a-days because that's what I knew. We did 3-a-days in college. One was a pool workout. But I was doing 3-a-days with some of my girls at Crowley. And it was tough. It was intense. And I think it was something, of course, that they had never, ever experienced in their life. And they responded well. And with that particular program, it was a lot of me. And when I look back at my coaching career, it was my way. It was Sid's way. We're going to do it this way. My assistants will walk in. I would always have a game plan, but it was my practice plan. Here's what we're going to do. And I believe, to give myself give myself some grace. It was because I wanted, if anything were to go wrong, I wanted it all to fall on my shoulders, right? So that no one else had to, hold that against them. And so we did really well. We ended up, for that particular program, taking them farther than they've ever been in the playoffs, and ended up putting a banner on the wall. So that was my first time to talk to high schoolers about, this banner that was on the wall that was going to have this year of which you were part of making history for a program. And it was at that moment, I believe, I began to want to chase that feeling, right? To begin to allow girls to envision, being part of making an impact and making history and being able to put it on a wall. So when you come back to your alma mater, you will see it. And I would tell them all the time, like, I'm not going to be here forever, but this will always be your high school where you graduate, and you're always going to want to come back. And when you do, I want something up there that's reflective of our time together. And so that's just kind of, where I began to, dabble. I moved around from there. My husband was a college football coach. So we were places 3 years, 4 years or whatnot, so that I'd go somewhere else. Ended up in College Station and took over that program. My first couple of years, we make it all the way to the regional tournament. You win on Saturday at the regional tournament, you're going to state. But my first 2 years, did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Uh-oh, hold on. So I loved my time at College Station. You know, that's where Texas A&M is. So we had that big college atmosphere. A lot of families there were either tied into the university in some shape, form, or fashion. So that particular environment, I was there for about 8 years and did some really good work and had to leave, you know, at the end of my 8th year. What I found interesting about that program, I had a chance to really build it from almost the ground up. Had some really good foundational pieces coming in because the coach before me did a really good job of setting the tone in terms of skills and culture. And we'll start talking a lot about culture or whatnot, because I think that's very important. And we just really created a sisterhood where the girls knew that this was our program. You know, these are your sisters. If you need anything at school or if you need anything in volleyball or in life, that we would always come back to the program. And I believe that's where I really started thinking along the lines of student-led leadership. And that's really where I began to, you know, make my mark in that. And how am I leading students to lead students? And I think that's very important now that I've won, you know, state championships. It's very important that your seniors are the leaders in your program. And you also have to teach and mold them on how to lead, you know, in good ways, because not all of them are going to be on the court and be your starters or anything like that, but they all have a role in your program and driving your vision. And so I believe that, you know, that program just really taught me about student leadership, and had some good times with some senior groups there, with just making impacts on the court and in the community of the school as well. So I think that's kind of early on, you know, where I was just really figuring out the foundation of culture and what it takes to build a program, and laying down the pieces, not just on the court, because we were intense. Like everywhere I've gone, my girls they will describe me. And I used to, you know, I don't know, get my feelings hurt when they would say, "Oh, you're intimidating." And I feel like I've worked so hard to try to get away from this fear factor of intimidation. But now they'll say, "You're intimidating, but we love it. We want to match, you know, your intensity, and we want to get to, you know, we really want to impress you," or whatever it may be. And I'm like, okay. So they kind of see the relational part of it, which really speaks to who I am as a coach. I think that's really important, that I didn't really do very well early on, right? I wasn't come in my office, let's have conversation. It was, okay, these are the numbers. This is why you're, you know, you're on the court, you're not on the court. So I was more objective and fair, but really objective. Well, kids today have changed, right? You can be objective, but there's got to be some conversations in there, because these kids today want to know why.
Right.
And that's okay. Or they need to know how our brains are processing informations to make decisions. Why is that important? Because that's a life skill. And they need to also understand, you know, when people are making decisions, what are the thought processes behind it, so that they can also get on board and align with, you know, what coaches are thinking or doing. And so, you know, I'm more relational in my coaching now. Like, let's have a conversation. We'll have individual meetings during preseason to say, okay, what kind of impact do you see yourself making this season? What role do you want to play? And then we'll give them some feedback on what we see too. But a lot of that is led by them. Like, we want you conversing about who you are, what your identity is going to be in this program, and how are we both going to help, you know, work to get you there, so that they know it's a partnership in that.
Right. And you bring up a great point. You talked about your seniors being your leaders, but you also talked about giving them those skills. And, you know, leadership is just like any other skill, you know, bumping, setting, passing, you know, swinging a baseball bat. And not every kid is going to be as gifted in those skills as another. And so I think we do our kids a disservice when we just say, okay, you're a senior, you're a leader, and we throw them out there with no training for leadership. So glad you brought that point up.
Yeah.
For our listeners, we're visiting today with Cyd McMillian, very successful educator, coach, and consultant. We're going to hear more about that as we get into the interview, but let's take another quick break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive, indoor scoring tables and video boards. You've heard me say before, we've got a Sideline Interactive score table in our gym, and it's just fantastic. We use it for home games, of course, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. It's tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and their display boards in action. That's sidelineinteractive.com. Their products not only generate income for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how coaches and athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. It's so easy, even I can do it. You don't need any special device or any design experience. Go to Gipper.com, tell them you heard about it on the podcast. Use our code ADPOD10 and you'll get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Create custom content for your school's social media channel. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Cyd McMillian, educator, coach, and consultant. Coach, you had tremendous success at a number of different schools, and then this past year you made the move to Episcopal. What attracted you to that particular position, and how did you manage to come in and kick off with the state championship program right out of the chute?
God is truly amazing, right? Let me back it up a little bit. After I left College Station, I went over to New Mexico. My husband took a job at University of New Mexico, and I found a job at this school called Cydryce High School. And in my first year there, we won a state championship, and that was my first one in 2014. And when I look back at that, and I've had recent conversations with one of my players, a couple of my players from that era, that was hard. The coach before me did a great job again of really training. So the girls were well trained. A lot of them played club, but I could tell mentally they were defeated. So I was walking into that particular culture with well-trained physical beast of athletes and young ladies who had just gotten beaten up, right, by the game mentally. And so that particular ride was tough. It was a roller coaster. Like we would do well, and then all of a sudden we would crash, and we would do well, and then right before the state tournament, we just spiraled. It was like this downward spiral where we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't win. And I remember we went to the board, and I always have a whiteboard in my gym. And I said, on this board, we're going to write down, what do we know to be true about who we are as a team and the things that we are doing right. And so the girls and we began to explore, like, what are we doing? What's our identity? What do we know to be true about ourselves? Because I think sometimes when you begin to spiral, even in life, you kind of lose your identity. You lose yourself, even though you're probably doing some really good things. And so we have to go back and just affirm those things that are inside of us that we're doing right, to let us know we are on the right track and things are going to have to turn around. And so we began to explore that. We put some things on the board. It was our last practice. And the last practice, I always let the seniors run it. And then at the end, I'll say, okay, does anyone need anything else? And I remember Tatiana Battle was one of my top players on that team, says, I just need a few more reps digging middle back. And I said, okay. So we threw up some balls, hit her. She dug middle back. And then we go into the state tournament. And I'm thinking, are we ready? Because like I said, we had lost so many games in a row. And in that particular state tournament, I get these goosebumps because it was this aha moment where all of the light bulbs in my players began to go off at the right time. We were in a dogfight Friday night against one of the best teams. I think they had won state the year before us. And it was in the third set that everybody's light bulbs just began to click and began to fire off. And as a coach, if you've ever been in that moment, it is an amazing, affirming feeling of, I don't know, you're so proud, right? You're so proud of those individuals who had the grit and the perseverance and the determination and the resilience to keep doing what they thought was right, even when it didn't look like they knew where they were going. And then to see them at the top of the mountain and to get the outcome that we've been pushing for. And it was at that moment that we end up beating Sandia Prep. We go until Saturday and we play an opponent. We are facing an opponent that we have not beaten all season. They had beaten us 3 times. We shut them down in 3 sets. And so, you know, when I look at that, I'm like, the mental game is so impactful. And people will talk about that all the time. And I'm not a mental health expert by any means. But like I said, when I came in for that particular group, they were mentally defeated, well trained. Physically, I mean, lights out, could do whatever and manipulate the ball very well. But the mental part was the struggle that we had to continue to battle and build so that we can get to a point where a team that has beaten us 3 times doesn't even pull a set on us in the state tournament, and we win that title. So that was my first one. And I remember in that moment, me and my assistant coaches, I just couldn't stop clapping. I just kept clapping and clapping and clapping. And I say that because the program I had left, the one in College Station, those seniors made it to the state tournament in Texas. And so I was just on a Zoom with those particular girls about a week ago. And I tell them we were almost there together. So while I'm winning a state title in Albuquerque, they're over there in the state tournament in Texas. And so I had almost figured it out how to build, right, a state championship program, but I had to leave because personal reasons took me to Albuquerque. But I left girls leading girls, and it got them to the point of where they were in that state tournament battling. And so that was an affirming moment for me as a coach too, to say that I had figured something out on how to teach students to lead students, because even in my absence, they were able to elevate that program and elevate that sisterhood to a level that I had not been at before. And at the same time, I was taking another group of young ladies and getting them to that state championship level and mindset. So, you know, I leave Cibola, I go over to a private school called St. Agnes, end up winning my first season there. So I walk into St. Agnes, in my first year at St. Agnes, we win a state title. And I'm like, okay, you know, and it was much different. You know, winning a state title is not easy. That's why very few teams do it. And then winning a state title in your first year is even harder, because you have to figure out the culture of your community. You have to figure out the vision. You have to figure out the key players that are going to drive your mission, right? And then there's all these accountability factors in there. Then there's just girl stuff that comes along with all of that. And you're trying to play this game and create this work-life balance for them as well. And so that was a little bit of a shift in culture. Like, the program was really good. They still had talented players, but again, we had to shift the mindset of, you're not just battling, we're going to battle to win. As they kept pushing and they kept getting to the state tournament, but they couldn't figure out how to win it. And I don't think there's a magic recipe. Like, I can't sit here and say, you know, this is the magic recipe and that if you follow this, you're going to get a guaranteed result. Well, no, there's no cookbook for success, right? But I do think there are several factors that come into play, which then leads me into, you know, taking the position at Episcopal. And so a lot of people will say, well, how has Episcopal been different? And I say it's been the culmination, I feel, of everything I've learned as a coach prior to getting here. I literally felt like, and I was tasked at rebranding the program, coming in and giving it a fresh look, a fresh start in every way possible. And I had a great athletic director and administration that was fully supportive of that. And I believe those are the kind of admin people that I need, that give me the freedom to create and to flow. And then, you know, if I need something, I can always go back to my AD, or I can go back and ask. And he's been great. His name is Jason Grove, and he's just been great in, you know, laying down his vision and expectations of just wanting to rebrand this program, and then being fully supportive of that. When I came in, I said, okay, I need this. We don't have enough balls. I need some training equipment, you know, and there's money that goes into having some of those resources in order to train at the level we want to train, and being able to have those resources to pour in and kind of, you know, give these students the tools that are necessary to get them to the skill level that they need to have. So that was step one. Staff, hiring of staff, I'm real big on, I want to hire my staff. I'm really good at hiring if I'm in a public school setting, finding teachers that are coaches, because they have to be full-time teachers first. Private school's a little bit different where we have part-time coaches. And so that looks a little different than if you're trying to find a full-time teacher coach. And so I was able to bring over my staff, and that's a big part of who I am, is just that loyalty and that family of who I surround myself with. And, and as much as I pour into them and I mentor my staff, they're also pouring into me, and we're just feeding off of each other. And I think that's important if you're talking about winning state championships or just having programs of excellence. You might not win a state championship, but if you're talking about a program that's driven by excellence, you have to be mindful of the people that you're putting around you. And I'm not a yes person. I'll tell them all the time. I'm not looking for people that just, I'm coming up with the ideas like Sid was when I first started coaching. I'm looking for you to challenge me, make me think outside the box. And, and I'm also looking to see, what are your strengths? What do you bring to the program that I can say, okay, here you go, versus in the beginning, I did everything. I did the program bonding. I set up the team dinners. I wanted everything my way because that's how I thought it was supposed to work. And with this particular program at Episcopal, I'm blessed that we've been working, my staff and I, together for so long that I'm like, you love, team bonding and okay, that's all you. You love the little kids when we do camps, and I do too. And I'm like, but that's your passion. Well, I want you to run with that. And so I believe when you give people those rights and those lanes, and in order for them to be creative too, right? There's this accountability there in driving the mission, and we're all in sync and aligned. I believe that, helps programs really get to that level of excellence because everybody's on the same page. And there's conversation to be had, if there is any conflict, how do we deal with that? How do, this younger generation of coaches want to, sometimes get on a cell phone or text. And I'm like, no, I'm old school. You can call me or we're going to sit down and talk face to face. And they know that about me. And the same is true for my players. I'm like, we don't handle anything on text. The one thing you can tell me is, hey, Coach Matt, can we have a meeting? And I'll say, sure, let me know what the meeting's about and I'll see you, da, da, da. But, I'm really conversational, and I think kids are missing those adult-like conversations. And so I try to really bring that to my programs too, so they know that they can, advocate. I want you to tell me, if there's something you disagree with or something you agree with or an idea you have for our program as a student. I'm going to empower you. I'm going to allow you to find your voice and encourage you to speak out because we want to hear it. And what you have to say is important and it matters in who we are and our identity as a program. So I think for Episcopal, all of that kind of came together, building the culture, finding the seniors. The first people I always meet anytime I take over a program are the seniors. After I say yes, I'm like, okay, let's sit down, let's have conversation, and I want to see, like, this is your last year. You don't get to come back. What do you want that newspaper to say about, your senior season? What does it look like? What is when we do some fun things, what fun things do you want to do throughout the season? It's not just volleyball. Like, I don't want to be bored and just do volleyball every day. What kind of fun activities are we going to bring to the table? So I don't know if I've talked too long, if you have some questions, but I believe all of that came into play with us winning the state championship at Episcopal. We had to build the culture for sure.
No, and it was all great stuff. And I love the story, how, each stop, you took something from that previous coaching experience. And then, as you said, it all came together for you at Episcopal. Great story. You kind of already did in a good way, sort of a best practices culmination. And we'll do this again at the end of the podcast. But if one of our listeners want to reach out and pick your brain, find out a little bit more, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
We can give them my email. Do I say it online now, or do we type it up? I don't know how we do all that.
We're very low tech here. You got to say it out.
Okay, I have to say it. So my email is cmcmillian78, and I'll spell that. It's CMCM ILLIAN78@gmail.com. Or you can call me. My number is 812-219-6067. Now, I might not answer, so you have to leave me a message if your number comes up because I don't recognize the number. So leave me a message or text message me, and then I'll be like, oh, okay, let me call you back.
And again, we'll do that at the end of the podcast as well. And Cyd's information is on her LinkedIn profile as well. So check her out on LinkedIn. Once again, our guest is Cydryce McMillian, coach, educator, consultant. We're going to hear a little bit more about that when we come back. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Huddle for their support of the podcast. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches just loved the smart cameras, the mobile apps. Of course, they love the analytics, but Huddle provided us with the tools to help our teams, our coaches, and our athletes play at the highest level. Huddle is going to provide a professional grade solution to the challenges that you and your teams face. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and find out how to turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. They're going to help you recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present, and help show your school's diverse history along with your proudest moments. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today.
Okay. Well, I would like to give I just heard on the commercial break, a huge shout out to Huddle. I have been using Huddle for a long, long time. And I love how they have evolved as I have evolved as a coach, and they make it easy as a high school coach to really be able to utilize some film analysis, because a lot of times, at the high school level, we don't have all the hours that college coaches have. I know I don't have hours to be sitting and looking at a lot of video and breaking it down. And so Huddle makes it easy. I think their packages are definitely affordable, depending on, what you want to do with Huddle and how you want to make it work. But I do think, if you are pushing for excellence, you have to have some kind of film analysis or some kind of film breakdown, either for your own team or for your opponents or something, just so you can just give your team an edge, right? Every time I go out to a battle, I want to make sure my team has an edge on the other team in some shape, form, or fashion. So Huddle allows us to do that. And I'm very appreciative of, kind of what they've done to even evolve with the game of volleyball as well.
Oh, well, thanks for that shout out. I know, our good friends at Huddle will appreciate that. And as a longtime coach using Huddle, absolutely. And again, as an AD, our coaches just loved it. We had the Huddle cameras in our gym, out on our fields. Just great stuff. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Cyd, we always like to let our guest give a shout out to some of the mentors that they've had in their career. As you know, none of us get to where we're at on our own. The expression that I always use is I still hear those voices in my head from my mentors. So do you have any voices that you still hear?
Absolutely. I would not be the coach and person I am today without the voice of my mom and dad, right? So I can't overlook their voices and that just support system and voice of reasoning throughout my career. They're just two phenomenal human beings. I'm a little biased, but they've just been very instrumental on helping me construct, some of my philosophies and my identity and making some business decisions and things of that sort. So they are my prime, I call them my peanut butter and jelly. They're my prime, mentors. And my sister has been a huge component of that. I'm going to dabble into writing a book, and she's going to walk alongside me with that journey and get on board with me there. So family is big, and I'm big on family in my programs. It's a volleyball family, and One of the things my dad always preaches is about family. And I think he is spot on when he says, you know, family is priority for those reasons. And so they've been huge mentors. I was just on the phone last night, actually for about 2 hours with Ruth Nelson, one of the greatest women in the sport of volleyball, and has done so much in our community, just for women, and creating, you know, a balance for women, and teaching us how to find that work-life balance, and feeling empowered, especially for minority coaches and minority players. She's been just a breath of fresh air. Even last night for 2 hours, just listening to her talk, and I'm over here just writing tons and tons and tons of notes down, as I pick her brain on what I want to do next, or what do you see going on in the volleyball world right now, and just kind of hearing from one of the greatest of all times, and knowing that I have access to that is just a blessing, you know. Another lady that I love to kind of pick her brain is Sue Betts. She was my assistant athletic director when I was in College Station. She was the first one who I thought really sat me down and really gave me constructive feedback on, and I'll remember her words. She's like, everything doesn't have to be Sid's way. And I looked at her and she's like, everything's your way. Practice is at your time. Practice planning is your design. And so she was the one who was really eye-opening in those moments of teaching me that it doesn't have to be Sid's way, and that I needed to, you know, encourage those around me and help those young ladies that I'm mentoring, or my coaches or whatnot, to have some accountability and ownership in my program by giving them the green light. And I would tell her, I did give them the green light. She's like, but did you give them the green light? You know, or are you saying you gave them the green light? What does that look like? What does that sound like? And so she's been very instrumental in my growth too. And to this day, I can still hear that, like, it doesn't have to be Sid's way. You know, are you being inclusive? Do people still feel this sense of belonging in your program? And so I can't say enough about that. And like I said before, I've had some great ADs. I just have. God has truly blessed me with every school I've been to, just to have some really good ADs who can be constructive, but also affirm the things that I'm doing right. And not that I need somebody to applaud or, you know, tell me all the time you're doing a good job. I don't need that. But I appreciate when they do acknowledge it, and at the same time can give me constructive feedback on growth, and can say it in the right ways that I'm receptive to. And they've just been wonderful at, like I said before, allowing me to create and get in my own. And so my ADs, like I was saying, has just been very instrumental in my growth too. And I feel like they've allowed me just to evolve as a coach. And, you know, I push back, you know. Sue Betts would tell me too sometimes. She's like, you don't like to hear the word no. And she'll still tell people that about me. You can't tell Sid no. And I'm like, you can tell me no, but understand that I might try to figure out another way to get what I want, if I feel like it's something I really want or I'm passionate about, from, you know, whether it's my program or whatever it may be. So I can take a no, but I'm also the type that I'll try to, you know, find my voice. And if it's something I think is important or valued in a different way or a different route. And I think that's a life skill. I teach kids all the time, you know, don't settle for no. If you're passionate about something, figure out a way to get around whatever's driving the no. And so I'm trying to think, anyone else?
Well, let me make a quick comment on that. I always tell the story. I had a basketball coach, actually coached our daughter, and I joke about that I told him no more than any other coach I've ever had. But I also told him yes more than any other coach I've ever had, because he was just constantly, you know, just the Energizer Bunny, you know, hey coach, let's do this, or, you know, hey Jake, can we try that? And sometimes it was, no, we're not going to do that. And other times it was, hey, that's a great idea, let's do it. So I think it's okay to be told no, but as you said, you know, come back and approach it from a different angle.
Yeah, for sure. You know, you don't want to be combative or disrespectful by any means. And I've never been that. I don't think Sue would ever say that, but yeah, for sure. I can come up with a whole lot of different angles when you tell me no. Um,
Well, again, appreciate you, sharing your heart, sharing your mentors. Let's before we go into break, let's talk real quickly about, you're, in addition to being a teacher and a coach, you're also, a consultant, working with, ADs and coaches and teams on a lot of different topics. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of, just now starting to really put a title to it and in consulting, if you will. I do have quite a few people that just kind of casually have reached out and they ask, whether they're pursuing a coaching career, or they're pursuing, trying to get to the next level. And so I feel like I've been in the game long enough and I've been in a lot of different establishments across the country at different levels where I can provide some kind of knowledge. I tell them I'm not an expert, and I'm not perfect by any means, but if there's something I can say that just piques your curiosity or gets you to kind of look with the broader lens at a situation, then I'm helpful and I'm wanting to do that. I think it's important to share. And Ruth and I were talking, like I said, last night, and she mentioned that coaches don't share enough, especially females. We just don't share enough. And I'm the type, like, you want to get on the phone, let's talk about, I could talk volleyball or whatever it may be, just to share out or pick people's brains. And I agree with her that we don't do that enough, and we don't consult or value, even expertise. Sometimes people just want stuff for free, right? When people have given years and years and years of their life to be these master level professionals and whatever it may be, volleyball coaching, business, whatever it is. So everything's not necessarily free, but I think there are opportunities where you can give back and you can share and help somebody else get to the next right thing, for their life, whatever that may be. I'm really big on just make the next right decision. Don't make it so big that you get overwhelmed by everything. Well, what's the next right thing? And then after you make that decision, I read a book and it's like, okay, now think about the next right thing to do. And so I enjoy that. I enjoy, just kind of having conversation and driving curiosity, getting people to think outside the box, maybe looking at things from different angles and different perspectives. And so I definitely feel like I'm fulfilled when I'm in that element and I'm consulting and helping someone else. And it's just another element of the game. Like, the game has been good to me. I've found some success in it. And if I could share and give back and help someone else make an impact on the lives of youth and kids, then I'm all for it. I mean, they are our future. And so sports are not going to go away. And we just need to get better professionally at how we are dealing with kids, because it could be a really big part of their development. And so I want coaches to be able to do that well and be able not to just think of yourself as a coach, but as an educator, as an influencer is the word of choice nowadays. And I believe coaches can really, drive that message home in youth sports. And I would love to just give back in those ways to help them do that.
Yeah, and again, for listeners, I encourage you to go to Cyd's LinkedIn site. You can take a deeper dive into some of the areas that she is a speaker, presenter, a master coach, a consultant. That's a good word. So check out Cydryce McMillian on LinkedIn. We're going to take another quick break, but we're going to be back with some more. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast.
I'm like, I have advisory.
Hey, we want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in forms and registration, but they are so much more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile apps. They have reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can help your coaches with attendance and communication. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. It's time that you talk to someone who gets it, someone who's walked in your shoes. To take those next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. Welcome back, everyone, to our interview with Cydryce McMillian, four-time state championship volleyball coach, multiple Coach of the Year honors. Cyd, you've had a tremendous career and you still got a long way to go, but what are some things that you have learned from, let's say, your assistant coaches or even from your student athletes in your time as a head coach? Can you share that?
Yeah. I've learned a lot. Let's see. In no particular order, I don't have it prioritized. What have I learned? I've learned to be more relational. I've learned to have more conversations. So that way that, I don't hear this voice in my head saying it's Cyd's way, it's Cyd's way, it's Cyd's way. I also get to get input. I believe in, and I said this earlier, in inclusivity and belonging. I believe in diversity of thought and processing. And so in order to have that, you have to have multiple constituents, right, at the table, whether that's students or assistant coaches, and whatever those processes may be. And I'll tell them, ultimately, yes, I wear the title of head coach. Ultimately, I make the decision, but there's very few decisions in my program now that are made without collaboration. Whether it's our senior leadership group, I don't do captains. I don't name captains. I often think, how can you put a title of captain on someone before they even know what team they're leading? And so we have senior leadership groups where everybody can play the role of a leader. And, I've learned to better hold students accountable. And in order to do that, they have to have ownership and they have to have a role and feel like they play a part. And so we do a really good job now of helping them find their role and what part are you going to play so that they have ownership. And that way we can hold everybody accountable to the goals and to the vision. I've learned to really be more of a vision. I've always been visionary, but really teaching kids how to be visionary and how to not only set goals, but drive goals, and what that looks like and what that sounds like and what those meetings look like when you have to come back and kind of reassess in the feedback loops. So I've learned that from being around students and seeing some really good student leaders have taught me. I remember we were in the state championship at Agnes, and one of my seniors was also the student body president of an all-girls school with almost 1,000 girls. And we are getting our butts kicked. And we had to come out and win this third set in order to advance to the fourth, or we were out. And this particular young lady comes over and says, all right, guys, we need to remain calm. We need calm energy. And I was like, and you could feel, the energy in that particular huddle just all of a sudden just went calm energy. And she could read that group and she could read those young ladies at that moment better than I could. And she was spot on. And we went out there and ended up, turning the tide and pulling that particular game out. So I've learned to learn from students. Right. I think a lot of times we think we are the head coach and we're the overseers. And there's a lot to learn from watching kids and observing kids too, knowing that they're always watching us in return. So my assistant coaches, like I said, I've learned from them to give them roles, right? I think that's important. Give them responsibilities, and give them a part of ownership in the program. And I think that's so important. And I also believe I've learned to affirm, right? And to high five more. And I believe in the power of touch, and a high five, a fist bump or something when kids are coming off or going on the court, that I didn't always do at the beginning. So I think those are some key things that I have learned from my assistant coaches and from my players. I've also learned that when I give you my number, you use it anytime. I'm not teaching them that, but I'm learning that for me, that my number hasn't changed in 25 years for a reason. So if my players ever needed me or my coaches ever needed something for me, I'm always willing to be there for them.
Well, just great wisdom. And again, that whole relational thing, so important. And you've talked about it at each one of your stops. It's one of those things that I learned far too late in my coaching career, but oh so very important. Appreciate you sharing that. This has been really cool spending some time with you today, and appreciate you, taking the time to share with our listeners. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with what we call the Athletic Director's Toolbox. Now, you certainly know your way around the world of athletics, but we're going to take our final break and hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor the Toolbox segment. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director, or maybe a brand new coach, on their very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 items in their toolbox. So let's hear from Athletic Surveys. And when we come back, we're going to find out what Cyd McMillian, a 4-time state championship coach, coach of the year, is going to put into her new AD toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack for sponsoring the Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire program. As athletic directors, we typically only hear from that 2%, that squeaky wheel parent or that disgruntled athlete who didn't have a good experience. And we need to hear from that 2%. But you also need to hear from the 98% of the student athletes and the parents that really love your program. And Athletic Surveys allows you to do that. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never taken the pulse of your student athletes or your parents, you really need to check it out. It's such a valuable tool when you're talking with your principal or your school board or that squeaky wheel parent. Go to athleticsurveys.com for more information. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting with Cydryce McMillian, outstanding volleyball coach, educator, leader. Right now I'm challenging her to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let her put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Cydryce, what 3 items are going to go into your new AD toolbox?
Okay, this is hard. I don't know how serious people got when they got to this part, but the first thing that came to my mind, and maybe I need 4 things, but the first thing I was like, money. And what I mean by money, I mean, you have to have resources. You just do. And so whether that's financial resources or connections or a network or something, you need that first and foremost. You got to have resources, funding, networking, money, in order to drive your program and do the things you need to do. And you can do fundraising, right? That all goes in with that particular thing. The second thing I wrote down is you need an open door policy. I've spoken a lot about that over the podcast, about allowing people to kind of come into your space and hear your side of things, and also be willing to hear their side of things so that you can find common ground. So an open door policy of some sort so that you can find common ground and mentor and have conversation, I think is very critical to professional growth and personal growth. The last thing I put on there is, I've been in a lot of institutions where I've had great administrative support. There's going to be highs and lows on the job, and you need to know that you have a group of people or an athletic director or coaches or faculty or staff that will support the things that you're doing and have your back. And I think when you have that, then you're more brave and more willing to take some risk in those uncomfortable stages of leadership, because you know you have support there. So resources, open door policy, and then administrative or some kind of staff support for sure.
Well, again, great tools. And as a longtime AD, I can see the value in each of those. Cyd, this has just been so much fun. I know you got to run, but real quickly, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit from a coaching leadership standpoint, or find out more about your consulting business, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, please email me. My email again is cmcmillian78. So that's CMCMILLIAN78 @gmail.com, or shoot me a text or give me a phone call. My cell is 219-6067. You can also find me on LinkedIn with Cydryce McMillian.
Yeah, definitely, listeners, definitely check out Cydryce McMillian on LinkedIn. And thanks again for spending time with us on the Educational AD podcast. All the best moving forward.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it.
For our listeners, we do this just about every day, and we post our Zoom videos on the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. Thanks for listening. Come back next time for more best practices on the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Please visit our sponsors and our partners, the Global Community of Women in High School Sports, We Coach, and the Florida Coaches Coalition. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.